What type of developments do you see in market surveillance and regulation? Do you think that it's getting more tough, more difficult for market participants to be in this market as, let's say, smaller physical players here from Denmark? Are the challenges becoming bigger, or have we found a sweet spot in control and trading opportunity?
I think there is a general feeling that the market is becoming more complex, and the market is harder to understand. I think the flow-based, introduction of flow-based is an example of that. Before it was like the power would flow from the high price area to the low price area, to the next area next to you. Now with flow-based, there is a much more sort of, you could optimize 2 or 3 sort of steps down the road, and it's a bit hard to understand things unless you spend time on it. And I think some of the market is becoming more complex, and I think that is a concern, because the market is basically about, the way I see it, it's about the most efficient use of resources. It's about security of supply and transparency. Yeah, but I do think that transparency is becoming more difficult as we are making the market more complex. The reason why we are making the market more complex is again related to the fact that we are in an energy transition, and we need to compensate with more granular mechanisms for the fact that we are losing flexibility on the generation side. And also it's related, but still a bit challenging.
Where are we going now with this market? It's becoming a lot more complex, of course, more technical integrations like the 15-minute auctions, like flow-based market coupling. But you could say it's already an extremely well-established, efficient market. So what are the challenges ahead of us that we're going to face, also on a technical perspective?
I think we have achieved quite a lot, but I think we will continue to see further improvements, or not necessarily improvements, hopefully improvements, but sort of evolutionary steps. I think this co-optimization is something that the policymakers are thinking about now, which is optimizing day ahead and the balancing markets more in conjunction. I think another thing being discussed now is that a flow-based methodology for intraday markets to better utilize capacities, which could also help to alleviate a bit of the imbalance challenges we have. If you can use the intraday market more effectively for balancing, you can also help to sort of alleviate some of the pressure on the balancing markets itself, right? So I think we will continue to see these things evolving. I don't have all the answers, but I think that's a couple of examples.
I just wanted to ask here one question, and I don't know if this is okay to talk about, so we will decide. But I was just wondering, like, as the energy industry as evolved as it is, do you think the policymakers are following the trend of developing so quickly as the energy market is? And when we're looking at, well, both on a European Union level, but also on a Europe as a whole level.
You know, that's a key question. I think you're touching on something very important, because you know you have some layers here in the sort of hierarchy, right? You have politicians in the end deciding, and then you have the policy makers that are proposing to politicians. And then you have the ecosystem of market participants, industry associations, TSOs, NEMOs, or NEMOs means exchanges, trying to influence the outcome. So I think the policymakers, whether it's related to the Commission, national ministries, national regulators, or ACER, I mean, I would say that they have a pretty deep understanding of what we're doing. The challenge. But still, I think we have the risk that some decisions become more academic than really sort of practical. So there is a big need to connect the community with the policy makers to make sure that they are, putting forward the right measures. The second part of it is actually more complicated, and that's the political part. I have a big respect for politicians and politicians come and go, but for a politician to really understand how the market works on one hand, and then on the other hand, having a lot of pressures from constituents, telling them that energy prices are too high, and why is this price area next to me, 5 times the price, and why do we have marginal pricing? It doesn't make sense that the most expensive, the last source of energy that you need to cover is setting the price. I mean, that means that everybody is paying you're paying the highest price for everything. To explain why the marginal pricing, to explain why the model makes sense, exactly, and to explain why there isn't a better alternative, that is quite challenging. So I think there's a pressure from the people, from within the society related to power prices, on one hand, and making sure that we are not therefore making wrong decisions. I find difficult.
And it's even more difficult to make any sort of influence once a consultation has been published without actually consulting the markets, or a new policy, for instance, CBAM, I don't know, has been introduced again without the input of the market.